In this presentation, we'll discuss key terms about inclusive community spaces. So let's begin by talking about some key terms regarding why this area is important. So the goal of inclusive community spaces is to enhance community participation. So the community is everything outside the home. It's a particular area or place considered together with its inhabitants. So a community includes places like places of worship, shopping, malls, grocery stores, banks, restaurants, anything outside the home. And a lot of these places outside the home are places that people need and want to visit in order to function in society. Participation is meaningful engagement. It's access to a full range of opportunities unrestricted by bodily impairments or disabling physical, social, and political environments. So, participation means that people can go out into the community and do the things they need and want to do there, like socializing with friends or going grocery shopping, so they can engage meaningfully in the community. So those are our goals for inclusive community spaces. But unfortunately, people with disabilities are often limited by environmental barriers. So environmental barriers, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, are factors in a person's environment that through their absence or presence limits functioning and creates disability. These include aspects such as a physical environment that's not accessible. So an example of this would be a building that requires stairs to enter. That environment would not be accessible to a person using a wheelchair. It could also be a lack of relevant assistive technology. So that includes assistive, adaptive, and rehabilitative devices. So an example of this would be a restroom without grab bars. So the lack of grab bars would hinder a wheelchair user's ability to transfer on and off the toilet. It could also include negative attitudes of people towards disability. An example of this would be in a grocery store, if an employee at the grocery store was unable or unwilling to help someone retrieve an item off the top shelf because of their disability and they were not able to reach it. An environmental barrier could also be services, systems, and policies that are either non-existent or that hinder the involvement of all people with a health condition in all areas of life. So an example of this would be if you had to wait on a very long line. So some people with disabilities may lack endurance to stand or may lack endurance to wait for long periods of time. So if there was a system that required people to wait, for example, many people wait long times when they are getting a new driver's license, and that might hinder the ability of someone with a disability to wait in that line. So all of these are examples of different types of environmental barriers. So now that we've discussed barriers, let's look at solutions. So our first set of solutions are accessible design and accessibility, and these are very similar terms. So accessible design is design where the needs of people with disabilities are specifically considered, and accessibility is the characteristic that products, services, and facilities can be independently used by people with a variety of disabilities. So an example of accessible design and accessibility would be a building that requires stairs to enter. So having stairs would be an environmental barrier because many people who use wheelchairs or walkers would be unable to get into the building due to the stairs. So accessibility and accessible design would also include the presence of a ramp or an elevator so that people with disabilities could get into the building through another method. When you think about accessible design and accessibility, the elevator or the ramp doesn't always need to be right next to the stairs. It could be somewhere else, but as long as people with disabilities have the ability to access the building, then we would consider that accessible design or accessibility. So while accessible design and accessibility are really good, what's even better is inclusive design and universal design. So these are another set of solutions to manage environmental barriers. So inclusive design is where equitable access, dignity, and safety for all individuals and groups is normative, and universal design is the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. And so these concepts are similar, but the terms are used by different stakeholders, which is why I'm introducing you to both terms. And so an inclusive and universal design, in the same scenario as we talked about before with accessible design, say there's a building that requires stairs to enter, so that would not allow equitable access because it is hindering access by people who use wheelchairs or walkers. So an inclusive and universal design, they would redesign the entrance so that it is usable for all people. So instead of having a ramp on the side or an elevator, like you might have an accessible design, you would completely redesign the entrance so that there are no stairs. So this might be a very long ramp, and all people who are accessing this building enter the same way from the front door using the ramp. And that's what makes the access equitable, and it's usable to all people to the greatest extent possible, and no one is getting any particular adaptations or specialized designs because everyone is using the same entrance. So that is inclusive design and universal design.